Lo, nos dda I bawb sydd yn gwrando a wedi tiwnio fewn I sianeli Plaid Cymru yn ystod y Gynhadledd. Ydych chi efo fi, Mabon ap Gwynfor a Liz Saville Roberts, aelod seneddol y Blaid. Dwi'n ymgeisydd i'r Blaid yn Nwyfor Meirionydd ac wrth gwrs mae Liz yn aelod seneddol. Pawb yn adnabod Liz. Sut wyt ti, Liz? Ti'n iawn?
Dwi'n iawn, mae wedi bod ni'n nodyn ar lle wyt ti'n rithro o gwmpas yr etholaeth sy'n braf, achos dim lot o rithro o gwmpas yr etholaeth wedi bod mewn gwirionedd. Ond mae wedi mynd o'r bore yma yn ymweld â ffermydd a gael problemau gyda dreinio afonydd i'r swyddfa ac i'r swyddfa Nolgella am yr ail waith ers mis Mawrth. A hynny wrth gwrs yn gyfle I drafod pethau eitha cyffroes efo cwmni'r enw River Simple a'i ceir sy'n rhedeg gyda technoleg hydrogen.
Ceir ar hydrogen?
O brofiadau heddiw, lle da.
Ie, a mae'n etholaeth anferthol yn dydi. Dwi'n gwybod ers I fi gael newis fel ymgeisydd flwyddyn yn ôl, mynd o amgylch I cymunedau, wrach mynd I didweiliog ac yna yn gorfod mynd lawr am Aberdyfi. Mae'n oriau o deithio, mae'n bellter, ond mae'n mor hardd yn dydi.
Mae'n mor hyfryd, ac wrth gwrs mae'n adeg arbennig I weld gyda'r coed yn dechrau newid I lliwiau. Da ni yn ffodus Mabon, mae rhaid ni ddeud yn does.
Yndi ni.
Meddwl ydy'r etholaeth hardda. A bydd y bobl eraill yn agosino, ond byddwn nhw wei pethau.
Ie, ond mae hwn yn brofiad, da ni'n nghanol y Gynhadledd rwan hyn, a fel arfer, mae'n siŵr fysyn ni, dwi'n gwybod, yn Llandudno, neu'n Abertawe, neu'n Aberystwyth, ac mewn rhyw neuaddau, mynd I ffrindiau. Mae hwn yn brofiad newydd, ydy. Dwi rioed yn gwneud sesiwn byw, YouTube, Facebook, trydar o'r blaen. Ti wedi cael profiad fel hyn?
Wrth gwrs, yn yr oes Zoom sydd ohoni hi, efallai byn rwan, da ni wedi gwneud misoedd o Zoom, ynddo. Da ni dod yn fwy arfer efo, ond mae rwy'n, dwi'n falch bod ni'n arloesi, dwi'n falch bod ni'n gwneud hyn fel Plaid, bod ni wedi camu fyny i'r plat ac wedi ymdopi gyda'r broblem oedd yn wynebu ni am sut oedden ni'n mynd I gynnal Gynhadledd. A dwi'n gobeithio, a falle bod ni'n cyrraedd bobl o'r newydd.
Ie.
Dwi'n colli bod bobl wyneb am wyneb, mae rhaid I fi ddeud.
Cyfarfod pobl. I know Katerina's there making a comment there now. Is the translation? Unfortunately, there's no translation, so we will be flitting backwards and forwards from English to Welsh. So keep tuned in. Don't skip out because we'll be discussing some things that'll be cropping up later on with Adam. We were just saying now, usually we'd be in Llandudno, Aberystwyth or something like that in a conference. But this sort of virtual digital conference is different. But we've been conducting various sessions on this digital platform, haven't we? You and myself, Liz, we've been doing podcasts and meetings, public meetings.
Yes, and sometimes we've had translation, and that works really well as well. I mean, we're talking about the Build Back Better world, and the fact that somebody of my certain age has had to learn how to deal with this sort of technology. In many ways, it's very empowering, actually, because the things that you would have sort of, I can't do that, find any reason not to do it in the past, we've just had to get on with it.
Yeah.
And it's mean that we have found a way of coping, which should make us very, in some ways that should be, for us in Wales, there's always that sort of feeling of, can we do these sort of things? We're a little scattered nation. This is one of the means of using technology to bring us together. We've seen that we can cope with this. Let's take this, the North and South Wales is it's not that far at the best of times, but wow, it's way less far now. We can communicate with each other. Of course, we've got a challenge ahead of us with the campaign. What we'd normally been out on the streets, knocking doors. We know that we're facing a challenge this time round for the election, for your election next year, Mabon. But let's look at this, turn it on its head. This isn't just a reason we can't do this, we can't do that. Let's find other ways of doing things. And let's build a bit of confidence while we're at it as well.
Dwi'n cytuno efo ti fyna. A'r un peth sy'n rhwystredig, dwi'n riant I bedwar y blant sydd wedi mynd nôl i'r ysgol, diolch beth. Ond un peth oedd yn rhwystredig, a sydd yn rhwystredig o'r ochr wleidyddol hefyd, ydy, da ni wedi mynd trwy'r y cae lawr yma, a plant yn ysgol a gorfod dysgu plant adre. Maen nhw wedi cael 7-8 mis rwan y Llywodraeth I ddatblygu system dysgu pell. a dyn nhw'n dod o fyny efo systemau sydd yn addas ar gyfer dysgu plant eto. Maen nhw'n gwneud o'n America, maen nhw'n gwneud o mewn gwledydd eraill. Pam bod ni ddim wedi cychwyn ar y broses yna mwyn galluogi ni ddysgu o bell?
Ac wrth gwrs, efo proses dysgu, mae angen meddwl am sut mae bobl yn dysgu. Yr un fath ydyn ni angen meddwl am sut mae bobl yn cyfathrebu. Mae rai bobl yn cyfathrebu trwy clywed gwahanol negeseuon neu negeseuon mewn gwahanol ffyrdd. Mae'r un peth yn wir am blant. Now, I used to be involved with teacher training, which is really interesting because you're dealing with actually how people convey information to other people, to children or to adults, in a way that they recall, that sticks with them. And of course, people do it in a different way. And there's all this all singing. We're on a fantastic live time broadcast at present. We're probably recording as well, and if we're not, we probably could. But we also, alongside the technological, these sorts of ways of conveying material in this way, we also need to keep the personal touch. And I think this is important for children. So not just what we can do over a screen. How then would a teacher or somebody else or a mentor also be making sure that the individual feels that somebody cares about them, even if they can't do it face to face? And yes, you're right. We've had plenty of time to think about that. And this again is something to come back, this idea of us being, a small nation where we can make these personal contacts. We delight in our personal contacts in Wales. This is the conversation, the classic conversation about who you're related to and who you know. Well, how can we do that? How can we keep that anwyldder, this agos atachti, the closeness that we appreciate within our society? How can we do that with technology as well?
Yeah, I think that's a good point because contrary to what I said earlier, I was listening to a lecturer from Cardiff University, I think, recently saying that the one thing that you miss from the teaching sessions where, when you go to a lecture, when a student goes to lecture, is the lecturer knows who's not quite got it, who's not quite understood the subject matter, who's maybe falling a little bit behind, because they can read their faces, they can read the character in the room, and you can't do that online. That's one complaint I know that lecturers have. I know. Just thinking about technology, we've touched on technology there. You were very critical recently of the government, UK government now, their failure to get a proper track and trace system in place with the mobile phones, and you mentioned other countries that have done it and they've got apps that have worked. I know Scotland has set one up now. What was that palaver all about?
Well, I mean, and to be honest, now that there is a track and trace app, available, what I found having being open-minded to these things, although I understand that the police have been told not to use them, but nonetheless, being open-minded to these things, I downloaded it, and it tells me what's happening in LL53, which is where I happen to be now, my home address, my home postcode. But then I go to London, and I'm in Westminster, and I do suspect that probably the risk level is a little bit different from there to here. Well, I read it in the Evening Standard, it is. And there's nothing on that app that tells me what the risk is, where that phone is, and the there and then. And it's well, that actually is quite a basic thing. You expect it to be able to tell you you've moved from one area to another. This is the risk area that you are now. But un peth hoffwn i wneud, dwi'n gwybod bod bobl yn gwylio. Of course, y risg fan hyn ydy bod Mabon a finna'n cael sgwrs. Ond da chi'n cael y profiad o'n gweld ni. Byddwn i'n really falch o well, sut da chi'n teimlo o ddefnyddio'r technoleg yma? So for those of you who are watching, we really need to try and find our way of making this as interactive as possible. So what's your experience now of experiencing our conference in this way? But I really appreciate a couple of comments or any questions you have really about how we could, how we use this technology, how effective it is.
Jonathan's asking there now, how can we get more people involved? Listening in, tuning in. I think Jonathan's on Facebook. It's probably worth pointing out that this is also going live on Twitter and YouTube, so there will be other viewers there. How do we reach audiences? Sut fedrwn ni gyrraedd pobl, nid yn unig trwy dechnoleg fel yma?
Diolch am y cwestiwn, Jonathan. Mae hwnna'n llun really cool hefyd. Wel, wrth gwrs, mae hwnna, dyn ni yn dysgu ar yn traed ni fan hyn, am sut dyn ni'n cael, sut dyn ni'n hysbysebu hyn, sut dyn ni'n creu o'r ymwybyddiaeth bod hyn yn digwydd, bod ni'n cael y cynulleidfa i fiewn. Dwi wedi gwneud efo un APPG, coronavirus. Maen nhw wedi gwneud hyn yn wisnosol dros cyfnod. A wedyn dwi'n meddwl mae bobl yn gwybod fod yn dod. Nawr, mi oedd hwnna'n digwydd bore di Mercher, sydd ddim yn adeg arbennig o dda pan da chi'n ôl yn San Steffan. Mae yna bethau eraill yn digwydd yna a ddydd Mercher. Ond mae rhaid ni ddysgu wrth yn traed. So just Jonathan's question I was answering there. How do we need to find new ways of drawing people's attention to what we're doing and to gradually draw in an audience. I mean, this is something that we face as a party. This is one of our big challenges because we know actually within Wales, how do we reach out to people who aren't already in our community, be that the political community or the local geographic community? We're in an age where I think even the Daily Post is now regarded as a sort of it's not a national paper anymore, it's a Northwest regional paper. It's doing the best it can. It's got a brand new editor, Dion Jones from Carnarvon, which is really good news. But we know that our print media it doesn't reach all that many people. Nation Cymru? Yep. Okay, that has to be cross-political. Possibly it's very populated by Plaid. But for all of us, and perhaps this is one of the challenges we're going to face with the campaign, we're all of us going to need to think, we're in a political party. Some of us do it full time, some of us as supporters and members. Okay, how do we get our message across? That's what we do.
Exactly. And modern technology is great. This is a fantastic forum. But Rhiannon Barrar mentions I'd rather have the opportunity to be able to speak to us in person. And I think that's, we mustn't forget that the fundamentals of politics is communicating and talking to people and building relationships between people, talking with people face to face, knocking on doors, walking the streets. And that's one thing that we are really missing out on in this climate is that opportunity to talk to people properly and convince them that, when the election comes in May, they should vote for Plaid Cymru, the Party of Wales, because we have the ideas. But in the absence of that, then we've got to use this technology and other forms, haven't we?
Yeah, and think, our strength when we're persuading people face to face is that passion comes through, that we believe in what we're doing. We're not just assuming that we can walk into a role, that we have the right as a party to be a representative. That doesn't apply anywhere, and frankly, that does apply to the two big parties, Labour and Tory. They assume a right to represent, a right to govern. So how do we convey our passion to others? I mean, this is a challenge to all of us, frankly. I'm lucky, under a bit of pressure, if you like, in Westminster, because Westminster is a classic amplification. It's a soundboard. Whatever we do there bounces out. But that is Westminster, and we need to make our institutions in Wales as important and as resonant and as exciting as possible. And then, so really, as the SNP say, my success is in making my job redundant. But at the moment, we go to that strength.
And I see that Bernadette. Hi, Bernadette. How are you? Hope you're settling in the university. Bernadette from Prestatyn. She's mentioned the fact that we need to use Teams and Zoom, and I had a meeting with Bernadette on Zoom, and the new councillor that Plaid Cymru has in Prestatyn, Paul Pennington, organised that. And these forums and platforms are fantastic in the absence of being able to conduct town hall meetings and village hall meetings, things like that, isn't it? I was just thinking if I could go on, just something I think that's been very close to your heart, my heart, over the last couple of weeks, and I think Adam is going to talk about it later on. Please tune in to Adam Price, leader, his speech at 7:00. So we'll log off just before then. He will be touching, I think, on the issue of holiday homes and second homes in our communities. I know you've been doing a lot around this. You're in Nefyn, Morfa Nefyn there, and Nefyn Town Council. They've been doing quite a lot of work asking for powers to be devolved to local authorities so that they can adapt and change the rates when buying a house, and ensuring that they have more power to stop homes being sold as second homes and holiday lets. Can you sort of give us a little idea of the scale of the problem as far as Gwynedd and Dwyfor Meirionnydd is concerned?
Well, I think one of the member of Plaid Cymru who's been working on this, Tris Tudur, I mean, his background is as a solicitor, and what struck him, and I think probably what strikes many of us from somebody like myself who lives in Morven Evan, is that it suddenly felt that although we were used to a level of people of second-hand home buying, and that certain homes in certain places almost invariably went to second homes, it was suddenly this realization that it seems, I'm sure statistically it doesn't quite hold up, but it seems that almost everything that is being bought is now being bought by people outside the area. And I know certainly from young people in Nevin, the real feeling is now that, yes, houses have gone way beyond what is affordable. And I think what's interesting, Mabon, the work that you did on Airbnb with the data, the organisation that investigates, that analyses data about Airbnb, that 4,000 houses were properties registered in Gwynedd, which is higher than Cardiff, higher than Manchester, higher than Liverpool. So we've got there's a range of reasons, if you like, as to why housing that would have been affordable is no longer available. And what shocked me with the Air DNA information was where many of these short-term letting properties were located. They were located in places where traditionally young families started off with their first properties, and now those have all been snapped up.
Yeah.
So there really is an issue. I mean, I every credit to Cyngor Nevin, to Nevin Town Council, because what they've done is look at something, not something that we need devolved powers in Wales, but something that is already in Welsh Government's hands, if you like, which is the land transaction tax on second homes. Now, at present, Dwyfor Meirionnydd provides an awful lot of money into the coffers of Welsh Government.
Millions.
That does beg the question, really, would they actually, what is their motivation if they were actually pushed on devolving these down to a local authority such as Gwynedd? But if they were, and every property that was sold as a second home then had to pay a fair percentage of the price into the local authority, you suddenly have a really viable pot of money with which you could help people onto that first step on the housing ladder, which is what we evidently see we need now.
Yeah. Yr hyn sy'n frawychus, dwi'n eisiau lluchio gormod o ystadegau, ond os ti'n edrych ar Aberdyfi neu Abersoch, ddwy gymuned mwyaf amlwg, lle mae cyfartaledd pris tŷ yn y ddwy gymuned yna wedi bod yn tua 400,000 o bunnoedd. Cyfartaledd di yna, de. A mae hanner nhw, fath ti ddeud, wedi bod yn y miliwn a dros hynny o bracet yna. A da ni'n gwybod bod yna wir, achos da ni wedi gweld nhw. A mae cyfartaledd cyflog yn yr etholaeth wyt ti'n ei gynrychioli a dwi'n deisaf i'w gynrychioli ydy 16,000. Mae'n amlwg fyna gagendor anferthol na fod yna broblem. A'r drafferth sydd gyda ni ydy'n bod ni ar lawr gwlad yn gweld y broblem. Da ni sy'n gweithio yn y cymunedau, yn byw yn y cymunedau yma, yn gweld y broblem yna o ddydd i ddydd. Mae Cyngor Nevin wedi dangos yn glir am y broblem yma, ond fod y llywodraeth sydd gyda ni yng Nghaerdydd jyst ddim yn cydnabod fod yn broblem. A'r hyn sy'n gweithio rhywun di, wrach bod nhw'n gweld hynny, neu'n gwrthio cynabod fod yn broblem, achos oherwydd mae ardal wledig ydi o, bod nhw'n cynrychioli ardaloedd gwledig. Da ni'n gwybod fod Llywodraeth Llafur ddim efo diddordeb mewn gwirionedd efo cymunedau gwledig ni, ond i bod nhw'n methu gweld fod yn effeithio hefyd. Nid problem Gwynedd yn unig ydy hyn. Mae o'n broblem yng Nghaerffili. Mae'n broblem ym Mlaenau Gwent. Da ni wedi gweld prisiau tau'n cynyddu'n aruthrol yng Nghymoedd Gwent.
Ac wrth gwrs mi nawn ni mwy byth os yna cysylltiad yn cael ei cryfhau gyda deddwyrain o Llewyn Lloegr. A'r hyn sy'n drist wrth gwrs, mae rhywun yn teimlo o edrych tu'r Lloegr, edrych tu'r Cymru neu Gernyw, mae yna ragor o fesurau fanna i ddiogelu tai bobl leol. Lle dydy'r cwestiwn yma o pwy dyn ni'n cael allan. A dyn ni'n gweithio, mae'n cael ei taflu ato ni gan y Blaid Lafur, bod ni'n camwahaniaethu yn erbyn rai bobl. Ond y reality ydy bod hwnna'n gamwahaniaethu yn erbyn y bobl dyn ni angen i gadw'r cymunedau fan hyn and view i'r dyfodol.
Yeah, exactly. That accusation that, when we want to try and improve or better the control on housing sales, that there's nativism or xenophobia involved, we can dismiss that, but it's something that Labour will always throw at us. But when you see that in Austria, in Denmark, in Australia, in Switzerland, you can name dozens of countries that they've taken action to try and resolve this, because it's a public health issue because of lack of housing. It's a social problem that we're facing with lack of housing. And until the government realize this, and that they need to improve the housing stock and ensure that there is enough housing stock available for those who want to live in their communities, then this problem will continue, won't it?
Well, it is fundamentally a question of social inequality, and there is something deeply shaming that we have had a Labour government in Wales since 1999 that is very happy to leave that social inequality to get worse. It's shameful.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing I think Adam, or no, not Adam, Rhyn mentioned yesterday in his speech was that Plaid Cymru would look to scrap Betsy Cadwaladr University Health Board. Now, I've been a long-term campaigner, campaigning for health services in North Wales. I've seen firsthand how the Betsy Cadwaladr as an university health board have mismanaged a lot of the reorganisation and changes we've seen in North Wales. To me, that's good news. And surely I think to people in Dyfed Meirionydd and across North.
Many of us, if you speak to GPs and also some senior doctors within the district hospitals, we'll hear the same view. Obviously, to being familiar with an area like Meirionydd, it really feels like that it's an area that is beyond the pale as far as some services are concerned. And again, we're only just coping, if that, without any view really to how we need to plan for the future and how we need to provide services for the future. And actually, to come back to it again, our thema technoleg, there are aspects, there are things that we could do with technology if only there was a new way of thinking. There's way more that we could do possibly into the future. I hope to be working fairly soon actually with the Finnish embassy. One of the things we really want to look at is their innovations with digital health.
Wow! Tell me more. What does that mean? What will that entail?
Well, we've been one of the things that we've been trying to do in Westminster, to look forward from the Brexit quagmire. Obviously, we're still in the Brexit quagmire. It's the same sticking points as there were back at the beginning of the negotiations. Basically, state aid and fisheries are still there. In the meantime, we know now that the EU are taking the UK government to court over the UK internal market bill and what it does to the arrangements that were previously agreed in treaty form with Northern Ireland, but which somehow Dominic Cummings feels he's eminently well equipped to walk over. But
oven ready.
I'll come back to the point. One of the things that we're trying to do, the small team of MPs in Westminster, is to reach out to embassies and to show that, Plaid Cymru, we were a pro-Remain. We've always been a pro-European party. We want to strengthen links into the future with our neighbouring countries, the ones that I've been particularly involved with, Ireland, Finland, meeting the German ambassador fairly shortly, just to put these these touches out there, what we can learn about how different countries operate in terms of federalisation, with Germany, for example, how Finland operates, a small country, obviously, which carved its own autonomy out from the Soviet Union previously. So how do they operate as well? So it's one of the things that we're trying to do is to be, if you like, out there, bidding for Wales, talking out Wales, talking up all the opportunities to learn and to see what opportunities there are. But I think again the Finnish connection is really interesting over their use of technology. Of course, that's where the mobile phone came from.
Yeah, exactly.
it's one of the really exciting opportunities that we.
So we can learn so much from Finland education-wise, but also as far as health provision. I remember talking to Tom Brooks, who lives in Barthagest, and he's been involved with health management, and he was saying, if they can do in Finland the fact that it's a large country with huge distances between communities, and they can have hospitals there and have helicopters, an helicopter ambulance taking patients from one specialist hospital to another. If they can do it in places like Finland and Canada, why can't we look at innovating and developing these policies here? Yeah. Personally speaking now, I don't understand why we have to depend on charity money to maintain our air ambulance. I think we should look at helping the air ambulance out from the public purse a lot more. That's something that I think is needed. Why can't we innovate and learn from the Scandinavian countries?
So certainly. Just to bring back, we're in the conference. We're working up to Adam's speech. Really looking forward to that. I've had a few glimpses of what's in it, so I am looking forward to it particularly. But just thinking for other people who are, who we'd be seeing people, we'd be seeing people in the corridors, we'd be seeing people everywhere. I wonder what sessions people have enjoyed particularly in this conference so far. Os oes o rai bethau'n sefyll allan I bobl o gwbl, fysa hwnna'n lle'n defnyddio I gael rhyw deimlad os sut mae bobl yn, beth sy'n gweithio'n dda.
Ie, cwestiwn da, o'n i'n cadeirio cyfarfod ymylol ynghynt yn trafod grymuso cymunedau. Ac o'n i'n siarad efo Sam, aelod staff y Blaid. Gyda llaw, Sam, mae'n gadael y Blaid fory, mynd mlaen I wneud doethuriaeth. Pob lwc I Sam, diolch I Sam am bob dim mae wedi wneud. Mae Sam yn fwy arbennig o dda. Lot o syniadau da fo Sam. Tawaith, Sam yn dweud bod y sesiynau ymylol mae wedi bod yn llwyddiannus iawn. Lot fawr o bobl di tiwnio fewn. Tybed oes na sesiynau ymylol mae rhai pobl sydd yn gwrando rwan wedi cymryd rhan yn. O'r rhian yn barar eto, fringe sections session, saying, referencing the fringe section session, we were asking if, you've enjoyed anything. Liz, ti wedi cael cyfle I tiwnio fewn unrhyw beth, neu mae'n siŵr bod ti wedi bod yn Llundain?
Dwi wedi bod yn teithio, neu dwi wedi bod yn yr etholaeth. I think actually that is something, if you just think about it, I mean, obviously the face-to-face side of conference is really great. We see people, sometimes we see people we haven't seen for the year again. But the other side of that, of course, and what we're doing with this now, and possibly the fringe are probably the best ones to do it, is if people have a particular interest in something, they haven't got to travel all that distance to take part. They can participate actively.
True.
From their from the living room, from home, from the kitchen. And I think, and that, again, as for a party, and to come back to the fact that travelling around Wales can be challenging sometimes. And for some people, obviously, it's more challenging than for others. This is a real way of making it making our discussions much more available to everybody.
Dwi'n gweld neges fan hyn gan Winifred Davies am 13 mlynedd 16 yn deud yn union hynny. Mantais Gynhadledd ar-lein ydy mod I gallu mynychu a fysedd I ddim yn teithio'r Gynhadledd ffordd arall. Felly, diolch Winifred, croeso'r sgwrs Winifred Davies, dda cael eich cwmni chi heno. Yeah. Liz, ti wedi gweld Areth Adam do? Be mae'n mynd I ddeud? O ti'n gallu rhoi rhyw taster bach I ni? Dwi wedi cyffwrdd ychydig, oedd o'n rhywbeth yn...
Bach above my pay grade hwnna. Mae Adam ar I ora yn hadu gobaith.
Ie.
Dyn ni angen gobaith.
Oes.
Angen gobaith. Mae'n ddigon hawdd I roed I fi fel gleidydd yn San Steffan, mae'n ddigon hawdd I fi fod yn berniadu I Boris Johnson, a mawredd mae'n neud o'n eitha hawdd I ferniadu Boris Johnson. Mae'n ddigon hawdd I wrth blaid ferniadu. Mae'n rhan o'n job ni, mae'n job ni ydy craffu ar un llaw, achos mae pethau sy'n mynd heb I craffu, fel arfer, yn cael I wneud yn sâl. Mae hwnna'n rhywbeth dyn ni'n gweld yn San Steffan, a dyn ni'n gweld o llawn gymaint yng Nghaerdydd.
Ie.
Ond, fel gwleidyddion, mae gennym ni hefyd y rôl o ddangos sut sa pethau'n gallu bod yn well, sut I gyrraedd hynny, ag I godi gobaith. A dwi'n meddwl, os ni'n gallu codi gobaith rwan hyn yn yr oes sydd ohoni, mae gennym ni arweinydd sy'n gallu gwneud hynny, a dwi'n edrych ymlaen. Di ddim matro jyst clywed y geiriau a deall nhw. Mae yna brofiadau sy'n llenwi eich calon.
Felly mae e'n 28 munud i 7 yn ôl yng nghlok i fan hyn. Tiwniwch fewn eto am 7 o'r gloch, neu pidiwch tiwnio allan ddylwn i ddeud. Cadwch arno i rando'r Adam. Liz, you asked earlier about people's experiences, by the way, and flitting backwards and forwards a bit, but to be fair to some of the comments here, you asked earlier about some experiences that people have had in this conference this year, whether they've attended some things. Katerina says at 60 minutes past 6, I wonder if we can find that. Having just attended the session on the Diverse 50-50 campaign calling for gender balance and diverse representation across political institutions in Wales, I'd be interested in hearing Liz's view on the use of gender quotas to increase female representation in Parliament. For example, Rwanda has had more women in Parliament than any other country around the world. They've used quotas to achieve this. Also, could Plaid be the leader in our country in promoting such gender balance? I think that's a very good question, isn't it?
Did some work on this in Argentina, and and certainly with the what we've and they have gender balance on their lists. They use a list system in the Congresso. They decided there, and they argue this is an advantage, that if it is decided on a parliamentary level, so that every party has to do it, it takes a lot of the political difficulties out of it. Now that's quite interesting. Having said that, it is absolutely self-evident that all parties should be taking it on, because unless you have 50-50 representation, the people who you see representing you do not represent how we operate as people. That 50 is quite an easy mathematical formula to work to. As a party, we are working to increase the number of women and people of BAME backgrounds and people with disabilities who represent us. This is an ongoing work. I personally, I feel that I have a duty to try and encourage women, particularly into politics.
Yeah.
So
do I.
Yeah,
we all do, really, don't we?
I don't mean to be.
No, of course.
We have way to go on this. I mean, politics per se at the moment is not. It is adversarial. When you engage with the theatre of social media, you will get abuse. Every female politician will tell you about the list of things that people have, highly offensive things people have said about their appearance, about your gender. We have, just speaking selfishly, solely, possibly from just my own experience point of view, you have to find a way of toughening yourself up, and you will get knocked back. For people to put themselves forward, this will be true because we're going through the regional choices at the moment. We've got fantastic candidates there. I know many of them will get knocked back because they will, just statistically. One of the things I think is really important to learn for people who want to go into full-time politics is you have to toughen up. You will always get knocked back, and you have to pick yourself up and get on with it again. The reason why you have to do that, where you might not want to, is if we don't get represented by a range of people. And it will be the same sort of people who keep on coming through. But for the rest of us, we also have to know how hurtful this can be at sometimes and back each other up. But the one thing, and I'm speaking here as somebody who did the regional list 3 times, and I can remember, the third time how much it hurts. Mabon, this will be as true from your experience as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there's absolutely fantastic people standing. There's fantastic people standing on the constituency list for the Senate. I think Mabon's okay. He's all right. But this particular, I've been thinking about the regional list at the moment. There will be some people who won't get through. You will have another chance. Always learn. Always take it on. Learn from the experience. Go and have a little cry. stand up, pick yourself up and get on with it again. Because the more you do, the better you'll be, and the better you'll serve Wales and your communities, and we need you. And you look at some of the ones who are in Labour and talk to Tories, we need to beat them.
Ti'n sôn yn fan'na, oedd ti di rhoi enw ymlaen ambell i waith, dwi di rhoi enw ymlaen ambell i waith ar gyfer cael enwebiad wedi methu, ac yna mae rhywun yn dysgu o brofiad, mae rhywun yn ennill profiad bywyd ac yn y blaen, neu mae amgylchiadau yn golygu tro dwytha, ddari fi gael o. Ond peidio rhoi fyny de, sicrhau bod rhywun yn cadw, peidio rhoi fyny yn cadw ymlaen ac yn cadw i drio, achos ar ddiwedd y dydd mae gennym ni brosiect yn does, sef adeiladu Cymru well, sicrhau fod gennym ni gymuned i ymfalchio ynddo, cymuned sy'n gallu chwarae rhan yng nghymuned yr byd. You know, we shouldn't give up. If we want to be the voice of our communities, then keep on plugging away. Why is it, though, that women get such abuse online? Why is it that women get more abuse than men, especially white middle-aged men who are...
It's classically to do with power, and those who are not supposed to have power, if you get uppity, you will get put down. So to a degree, you know you're getting somewhere. One of the skills that I've just learned is mostly to ignore things. There are certain things you don't grace them with an answer.
Yeah.
And again, actually, one of the things I remember actually speaking to a number of women that we've done on training sessions with, people, you know, women particularly, but I'm sure this is true. This isn't just women. So shy of speaking publicly, and I really get that. I mean, I used to go bright purple. I can still go a bit pink when I'm talking now. I used to go really, really self-conscious, and it was a vicious circle. As soon as you're talking for somebody else, when you stand up to fight the cause just for somebody else, then you have a job of work to do, and that gives you a license to go in there. As yourself, you may be really shy and nervous. That's fine, but you're doing a job, and the job is different to you being allowed to be shy and nervous. So it's one of those things. Find the thing that you, in your heart, for social justice, you know needs fixing. Find that thing and talk to that, because that gives you, you know, you are out there as the only person who will save that cause, and that gives you the license to be uppity, pushy, you know, a bit full of yourself, because you're doing it for a reason. Yeah,
and I think that's part of the project, isn't it? The wider project of Plaid Cymru, what we are trying to achieve. And I suspect we'll be hearing Adam touching a little bit on that later on, this project that we call independence, which isn't incidentally an end or a goal in itself. Independence is the start of something new, of an exciting new chapter for us building a new nation. And that fight for equality across the board is part of this new country that we want to create and build, isn't it? And that's what's so exciting about this project that we have, isn't it? You know, that's what's driving us forwards.
And here's one I prepared earlier, everybody. So.
Oh, there we go. Annibyniaeth Cymru. Who's mentioned that? Someone mentioned that in the comment, didn't they? Where did I see the checkout? Josh Whitton. There we go, Josh. Good buddies. I'm a llyfrau disgyn gyda'i bob man. I've got books falling everywhere. Josh, diolch yn fawr iawn. Check out the Independence Commission's findings. A mae yna link i Facebook yna, with a link to Facebook. Hwna'n gyffroes yn dydi, Liz, yr Comisiwn Annibyniaeth yna, sy'n sôn am sut fedrwn ni gychwyn ar y daith yma o greu'r Gymru newydd.
Beth sydd mor wych am hwn ydy, mae gennych chi model o ddeddf yna, er enghraifft. Mae'n handbook, os liciwch chi, am sut i symud ymlaen. Mae'r ddau beth i gofio gyda hyn, a gyda'r proses sy'n cael ei amlygu fan hyn, ydy bod angen i ni ennill mwy o bobl drosodd. Felly mae'r broses fan hyn yn broses o wneud annibyniaeth yn fwy real, yn fwy cadarn. Mae'n ehangu sut dyn ni'n trafod rhywbeth, sut dyn ni'n siarad am rhywbeth. Dyn ni'n siarad rhywbeth i fewn i fodolaeth. Ac wrth gwrs mae'r niferoedd sydd â diddordeb neu sy'n cefnogi annibyniaeth, wrth gwrs maen nhw wedi cynyddu. Yn aruthrol, dydyn ni, ers 2014. Ond dyn ni angen mwy o bobl. Dwi'n gwybod bod yna drafodaeth yn mynd i fod pam bod angen 2 referendum. Mae'r ddau referendum yn ffôr o gael o tuag at y pwynt bod ni'n trafod hyn. Fel ni'n deud, ni'n trafod o'i fewn i fodolaeth. Ond yr ail beth efo annibyniaeth, a hwn, dwi'n meddwl, sy'n andros o bwysig, nid rhywbeth cyfansoddiadol sych dedd. Yr union peth oeddech ti'n cyffwrdd arno fo cynt, Mabon. Dyn ni eisiau annibyniaeth mwyn gwneud Cymru well. Fel na, fi gen ni'r modd i wneud Cymru well. Fel arall, dyn ni just yn atebol, dyn ni just yn rhan, fel mae bobl yn gweld efo UK Internal Market Bill, dyn ni just yn rhan o rhywbeth fydd yn cael ei gorbwyso gyda dododebau Lloegr trwy'r amser. Gadewch i ni dderbyn bod ni drws nesaf i Lloegr, ond gadewch i ni roed y modd i ni wedyn dyfu y gymdeithas deg cyflawn, cyfiawnder, dyn ni'n dymuno i weld.
Absolutely, and I think Mel Jones has commented a couple of minutes ago, and Mel, you're quite right. I think you're getting it wrong. He says independence is not the first goal. Getting a majority in the Senedd is absolutely right. I think independence is the goal as far as the Constitution and the future of the nation is concerned. But in order to achieve that, of course, the only party that will put a bill forward and that will legislate for a referendum in order for us to get to that point is Plaid Cymru. And so, you know, it stands to reason come May the 6th next year that people who want to see that goal have to vote for Plaid Cymru because there's no other way of achieving it. But as part of that, you know, Liz is right. We have to win people over. You know, it's a gradual process in that respect. You know, that's one of the problems with social media, that it polarizes things and, you know, it entrenches views. And we need to bridge that gap and reach out to people, because if we just entrench ourselves and say you're wrong and we're right, well, we're not going to win the other 70% over to our way of thinking, so to speak. You know, to realize that independence is the way to achieve a better Wales.
And I think also, I mean, we're waiting now for Adam's speech at 7 o'clock. But I think what we'll hear in the speech, some of the things he's been speaking about in interviews, is some of the policies that we can go out to people. So, you know, this is almost, if you like, as a subtext or a super text to independence. These are the sort of things that we want to do now. This is what we could do with the powers that we have at present. But think what we could do if we had further powers. You know, think how much better, how much more innovative. We wouldn't just be the end of the line for every service, every route, you know, every technological development. Why can't we be doing this for ourselves and be and you know, the way that we could grow so much if we took control of those powers?
Yeah, and you know what really gets my goat with the Labour Party and even the Conservatives, but most of the Labour Party, is, you know, social justice is what they claim to be all about, and they want. At one point, they had a goal of eradicating child poverty, and they couldn't achieve it, so they've got rid of that goal. And they've got to, at what point do they ask themselves, well, why haven't we achieved this? You know, why do we have to go cap in hand all the time to Westminster and to Whitehall and ask for more, only to be refused and turned down? You know, if we had the powers ourselves here, then we could do that. You know, we'd change the economic policies and the taxation policies in Wales to suit our strengths, so that we get to that point where we can eradicate child poverty based on our ability, not based on having to go cap in hand all the time, isn't it?
And surely, actually, this is empty politics. If you say you're going to eradicate child poverty and you fail to do that, admit the failure and look at another way of doing it.
Yeah,
why would you not want to get rid of child poverty? That would always be a goal. That should always be a goal. Not just a convenient message that, politically that's now become too fraught for us to keep. You know, we need to look at another way of doing it. And I mean, this is the frustrating thing to see with Labour in Westminster now under Keir Starmer, of course, that they're playing the unionist line at the cost even of Labour in Welsh government. You know, they don't want to be seen to be anything other than conventional unionist party now. That they're reclaiming what they feel that they've lost from the Corbyn years, but at the same time they're selling Jeremy Miles and Mark Drakeford down the Swanee.
Yeah, exactly.
Deeply.
And so, fel ti dweud, trafod gen ti yr abstentionist party na, yn abstaino ar bob dim yn Llundain, sef Llafur. lle mae syniadau y blaid yna yn Nghaerdydd. Mae gennym ni Adam Price am 7 o'r gloch rwan yn mynd i roi areth, ti wedi gweld, ni wedi sôn dan o tambaid, a fo'r syniadau newydd am be fedrwn ni wneud mewn Llywodraeth ym Mhae Cymru. Os ti'n sôn am adeiladu tai fforddiadwy i bobl yng Nghymru yn eu cymunedau. Da ni'n sôn am ofal plant a am ddim i blant dros blwydd oed mwyn sicrhau fod pobl yn medru mynd nôl i'r gwaith a sicrhau fod incwm gan bobl. Da ni'n sôn fan hyn am syniadau sydd yn mynd i chwildroi bywydau pobl, teuluodd a chymunedau yng Nghymru yn dydyn ni.
Oes, a hyn dyn ni wedi gweld, hyd yn oed yn amlwg ers cyn 99, pwy sydd wedi dychmygu y Cymru newydd i fewn i fodolaeth ond Plaid Cymru. Mae Llafur i reidio wedi manteisio ar gefn, ond os liciwch chi, mae'r felin syniadau wedi dod gan ni. Mae gennym ni gyfrifoldeb, ac os ni'n stopio dychmygu y Cymru newydd sydd ohoni hi, daw y Cymru newydd i fodolaeth. Mae'n aeth y gyfrifoldeb arno ni.
Mae'n gyfrifoldeb ar bob un sydd hefyd yn gwrando bob un mwyn pleidleisio sicrhau bod ni mewn. Just touching there on we've got Labour in government Labour in London who are just abstaining and everything, and so far Keir Starmer hasn't brought out any new ideas. He's just looking slick and trying to win old voters back, making himself look competent, while in Cardiff we're not seeing any new ideas coming through from Labour. They're stale, they're tired, and we really do need an election now to get rid of them. But the ideas, once again, is coming through from Plaid, isn't it? The ideas that, free childcare for every child over a year old, so that parents can go back to work and ensure that children get the best start possible in life. That we're going to build houses, 10,000 new houses. And the one thing that we know with Plaid is that the manifesto is costed, and we know it's achievable, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's one of the things, everything that has been considered in the speech today, it's been looked at, okay, what are the nasty questions that are going to come at us from here? We know the answers to those. We, from going into government with these policies, onwards to the arguments against the affordability of independence, we're working these out. We're able to address those questions from people now. We're able to explain it. It's becoming, that's what's so exciting about this period. Of course, we've seen how things have changed in Scotland. We see how things are afoot to change in the north of Ireland as well. There's that obvious question to be asked for Wales, and what is holding us back but us ourselves? We owe it to future generations to give them a Wales that's worth inheriting.
Yeah, absolutely, we do, don't we?
We're making it for them. So, and of course, with Westminster, just the UK Internal Market Bill, it's just a cynical piece of action to centralise powers. This is beyond even the way that the devolved governments are operating. Even within Parliament now, we see a world where Dominic Cummings doesn't want these minor interruptions of being held to account. And of course, coming back to that question of scrutiny, they then don't just do things badly because they haven't got particularly capable ministers in post in every case. Many of them are there just because they're loyal. They do things badly because they know they're not going to be held to account. This is a dangerous route we find ourselves on now.
Yeah, absolutely. Matthew Thomas has commented, given that 41% of Labour voters say they favour independence, how do you build on that and bring Labour round to champion Indy? It would be great if Labour wanted independence as well. That's up to them. We know that they have always put the union first, and we saw that in Scotland, where they actively worked with the Conservative Party to try and stop the Indy ref in Scotland. If 41% of Labour voters want independence, then surely there's only one answer, isn't there, Liz?
Well, yes, indeed. That's the dynamics of democracy, isn't it? And let us be inspired. I think many of us were inspired who went to the All Under One Banner rallies in Glasgow back earlier in the year.
Yeah.
I do think that probably there's time now for people, perhaps we should be just beginning to wind it up.
Well, yeah, I didn't notice it flown by. 9 minutes to.
Just have a cup of tea or a beverage of your own choice with which to watch Adam Price's speech.
So I think there's two takeouts from this then. Go to Good Bookstore and buy the new book that's published on the Commission Towards an Independent Wales. Ensure you buy that and read it. It's also online. And for you to go out there, ensure that you convince people to vote for Plaid Cymru next year, and then listen to Adam's speech in 8 minutes. I think that's my takeout. What do you think, Liz?
Da iawn. Dwi'n meddwl bod ni angen dirwyn I ben. Dwi wedi cael lot o gan y pwerau uwch yn penna ni.
O, na fo, wel, mae'n rhaid ni fynd felly. Diolch yn fawr iawn ti, Liz. Lyflu cael dy gwmni di eto.
Oce, tra wan.
Hwyl wan.